I am going to be honest. Sometimes my opinion feels like a waste of time to be 35 plus. I'm speaking from the perspective of a woman, accomplished, and still feel pressure to make marriage the main goal. Marriage isn't bad. That's not what I'm saying. The world has changed, and the reasons people used to marry don't automatically apply anymore. So I want to ask a real question. Do you want marriage or do you want what you were told marriage represents? Because if you remove the applause, the wow, congrats, the tradition, and the timeline, what is the point of marriage for a woman who already has her own life? And I'm speaking to my single high achievers at the moment. Side note, I'm not anti marriage, I'm just anti autopilot and anti performance. So this is not a don't get married conversation. I just want to give some context around what it is. It's me or us examining institutions without rejecting them necessarily. Okay? Because you can reject the heck or respect the heck out of the institution of marriage and still question whether it's the right goal for you. All right. So the first point I want to make is that marriage was built for a different economic reality than now, right? Because historically, marriage was about survival and it was about structure, financial security, especially for women, because it was, I think, the year that I was born that women were finally able to open a bank account or get a loan or something. I forget the exact thing, but something around that without a man. So, can you imagine? I was alive when women were finally able to have some access to resources, financial resources, without a man. So, financial security, social legitimacy, this is a big thing, especially in the Black culture and African culture. Division of labor, and finally, women needed marriage for access to stability. So, that's my first point. When this institution was created as is, right, our version, because I know there's a lot of religious um, connections to this. It comes out of religion. But the main thing was around the economy or economics, personal economics. And the reality was very different from what we're experiencing now. Because today, many women have high levels of income, multi six figure, seven figure business earners, high level of education. Right now, I think Black women are the most highly educated. I think African women or Nigerian women have the most PhD or are the most PhD holders. Something to that effect. Don't quote me, but I know that Black women are the most educated in the US at least. And I know Nigerians have the most PhDs or doctoral degrees. Anyway, today women have a lot of income, access to a lot of income, access, they are very resourced. Education, autonomy, which obviously is as a result of the high levels of education and money and large social networks. We're heavily connected, right? So when the original purpose of an institution changes, it's always reasonable to assess its value. And that's what that point is bringing up, the point of economic reality changing and how it's not as beneficial to women now as it was before for the reasons that I just stated. Second point I want to mention is that many women, many people entered marriage for reasons that no longer apply. And some of the reasons are social pressure, where even to date in many African countries, less obvious in the West, but in many African countries, if you're not married, there's immediately this shift in vibe and tone when people hear that. Some are outwardly disrespectful, but even the ones who are not can barely veil their contempt for you as though there's something wrong with you. And sometimes some of the leaders misses this, and if there's no name behind that, or if that title is not one that you're claiming or using or care to, immediately there's like some type of downgrade. So there's social pressure. Religious expectations is a big one too, because a lot of people believe that the benefits of marriage should be enjoyed under marriage, right? If you know what I mean. So there's that too. And then fear of being alone is a big thing on both men and both. Actually, this is applicable for both sexes. Fear of being alone, but more on the women's side because, as we see, even when men are not married or are single, it's easier for them to have companions, and it's different. I'll put it like that. And a final bucket under this is the fear of being judged or being criticized. And this criticism is a big one because it comes from a lot of the time from our loved ones, people we know, our mothers, people who care for us, judging us as, I say us, as imperfect, as less than, as not valuable because no one picked you, those types of very hurtful, negative judgments. And so, what I want to say to this is that I personally know a lot of people who have been married for long periods of time, and also a lot of older married people who will privately and who have privately admitted to me that they got married because it was time, because it was expected, and because everyone else was doing it. There was no mention of I wanted to, I love this person, it felt something, none of it. It was all the reasons that were shared with me were external, external focused, external pressure, the time. Because what else are you going to do? You've been to school, you have the degree, what else? Because if your mother, your aunt, everybody's yelling at you, get married, what do? Because all your friends, both male and female, remember, are doing it. You don't want to be the odd duck, you know. So I just want to say that it doesn't make marriage bad. It just makes the decision context very different. Because if you're making a decision because there's no other decision to be made, it's like the default decision. It's different, you know. And the final point that I want to share in this video is that when you're a high achiever, when you've accomplished high levels of success, it changes the math. The math doesn't math in the same way anymore. Because remember, my first point was economic dependence, because women were not able to have access to resources that would have helped them to be financially independent. So they needed, it was out of necessity that you be married, because what would your future be like if you can't start a business, if maybe at work you're underpaid, if you even get that job, you know? So when you're already self-supporting and you're emotionally aware, it's different. Why, right? What is the point? Especially if at the level of economic um, stability that you have, or the economic level of wealth that you have, the men, eligible men, are very few. So the options even are slim in a sense. You would either be marrying someone or get married to someone who's less financially affluent, which is not bad. Again, there's no judgment. I'm just presenting what I've seen, what I've observed, what I'm hearing. So you'd either be marrying someone who's less affluent than you, or earns less, or is less wealthy, whatever, right? Or who's at your level. But the right now, more than likely, you would have to step down again. Not necessarily a bad thing. There are very different dynamics in relationships, especially now. People are doing what works for them, so no judgment. But my point is that when you're financially self-supporting, self like so financially already supporting yourself financially, and you're emotionally aware, there's you're you likely are less, it's of less benefit in that sense to you. And because marriage is no longer a rescue or upgrade to your finances, what is the point, right? It may even become an addition or it could either easily become an addition or a constraint. Either way, right? It's not a deal breaker anymore. You can still enjoy a lot in life without that, because you are able to fund your goals and do the things that in the past required a man of means to help you to realize, right? Because the earlier model meant marriage gave you some levels of freedom. Well, the current reality is that for many women is that marriage can be laborious. It can end up being more work than if you weren't married, if you were single. So it's not anti-love to ask whether something adds to you or takes from you or complicates your life. It's the reality that we're in now. It's the reality that we're in. And a fourth point, I don't know if I said the last one was the last one, but it's not. The fourth point is that when the idea of having children, because there's some cultures, some parts of the world where marriage is to procreate and to have children, where they're pulling from the Bible and religions. So if that's what was heavily relied on, if the institution of marriage was solely for this group of people who believe that, solely to have children, then that would be the case, right? That is why you would get married. So for many women, children and not marriage is the real consideration, because you want to have children, but you also want the children. You want some legality around that so that they can have a fair share of what they would be entitled to if there's some legality around it, if they're under the protection of marriage. And then marriage can be a framework for parenting, but it's not the only one. It really isn't. It really isn't, because things have changed. If you want children, marriage might make sense for you. If you don't, the question changes, and it keeps you balanced and credible in the decisions that you're making. So that's really just what I wanted to share. That the right now it may feel like a waste of time, and these are the reasons why, because the whole scope has changed, and I shared 4 points to to support my thinking, what I'm sharing. Um, so the real question that I want to leave with is that, one, the question isn't that should I get married. The question is, what was marriage intended for? What was it designed for? What do you actually want at this point? And does the institution of marriage, as it is, serve that desire or that want, or does it not? It's up to you, but I want to be very neutral, but also provide some clarity around it, because there's nothing wrong with wanting marriage. There's nothing wrong with not wanting it. The point, or the The point at which regret is created is when you don't choose, when your choice is by default, when those 4 points I mentioned is what is fueling you or guiding your decision. That's where regret becomes an issue, or where regret is created, when it's not by choice but a default as a result of any one or two or three or four. So I just want you to have clarity around it. It's much more respectful than just complying to the default, right? So if this gave you some shifts around what you're how you're thinking about marriage, if you're single, if you're a high achiever, um, I put a starting point for you, not about marriage, but just to get clear on you and what you want, so that when you make that decision, you're informed and it's not a default choice to do it, or predicated on these other things, tradition and what people are doing. It's clear that this is what you want. So the resource I'm offering you is for you to get clear on the desires of your heart. Like, is this for you or is this not? And that's it. So that you make your decision from that empowered state. All right? That's the starting point. It's the Unperformed Woman's Guide, and the link to get it is in the description. I will see you in the next video. Ciao.